NGINX powers over 400 million websites around the world, but NGINX is more than a web server. It's an all-in-one load balancer, an API gateway, a Kubernetes ingress controller, and a vast galaxy of powerful software. And with great power comes great responsibility. With so many ways and places to use NGINX across your organization, how do you keep track of all your instances, keep them up to date, and keep them secure? With NGINX Instance Manager. NGINX Instance Manager makes it easy to manage all your NGINX instances in one place by automating asset discovery, management, configuration, and ongoing monitoring. Instance Manager's analyzer automatically discovers all your configurations, identifies instances with expired certificates or software versions that may have security or performance issues, including versions impacted by CVEs, and then makes change recommendations and updates based on best practices to resolve any issues. So you can see all the NGINX instances across your entire environment and see that they're up to date and secure. Plus, you can easily integrate all these automated tasks into your CI/CD workflows to put your instance management on autopilot. Now you can enjoy all the power of the NGINX universe without having to deal with the stress of sprawl. Give it a run. Learn more at nginx.com/products/nginx-instance-manager.
Hi, welcome to Sprint. My name is Tom Gamull. I'm a product manager at NGINX. I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia in the United States. And I'm going to be talking about Instance Manager, which is the product I manage. And we're going to focus on taking back control of your open source NGINX Sprawl. The vision of control of Instance Manager is to make NGINX even simpler to configure, scale, and maintain. By NGINX, this means open source plus compiled, you name it. If it runs, we want to make it simpler to configure, scale, and maintain. Instance Manager itself can really help out here. And we're going to go through a demo after just a few slides, and then I'm going to dive deeper into the technical side. One of the areas that we often see is we'll have a consultant or maybe a group come in and set up NGINX, and everything works, and they leave, and then a couple of years later we find out expired certs. Might happen. So we do have a way to help with that on Instance Manager, where we can actually go and scan a subnet, and we control whether we do this or not. It's not automatic. So if you're worried about, hey, I don't want stuff scanning my network, that's fine. But we can go and do this and get back information on certificates that are expiring soon. In addition, we can also get information back on anything that's listening on ports as a web server. And if it's NGINX in particular, any CVEs that might be applicable to that version. And we can do this through Instance Manager, which allows us to make API calls to also get that information. One of the benefits of doing this too is if we do have the agent installed, we can replace those certificates. We can now push both a certificate and key file out as long as we add those permissions on the agent side. And we can actually update certificates in an automated fashion. So when we have that agent out there, we're really able to control and help with that sprawl, in addition to the other features that we have with Instance Manager, which I'm going to go through right now through a demo of an instance I have running. If you're watching this, I just want to make sure that I explain the first part is going to be on the more of the UI side and more of the higher level features. And then I'm going to switch to the command line and show a lot of more of the install and under the covers and how things work. So if you're very if you really want to see the technical side, just hold on a little bit. If you don't, you'll know when it comes. Here we've got a system set up with a repo, and the repo itself contains, in this case for CentOS, the RPM packages. We also have Debian packages. And if you need the binaries, you could pull them out of either the RPM or Debian. So very similar to the same way we do open source NGINX and NGINX Plus. Now, since I have repo set up, all I should need to do is a yum install, and we should see this. So let me hit yes. It's going to grab the package. And the package itself is 33 megs, and it is installed. So that's how long it takes to install NGINX Manager. It is definitely installed right now. I'm going to copy over a account file here, I'm going to use systemd, so systemctl enable NGINX Manager now, which just starts at the same time. And I should, if I go back over here. Now I don't have anything running yet, but as you can see, Instance Manager is now up and running. So what you've just seen me do is install the package and start it up, and that's it. So very simple install here. I have the web server and the API up. So let me go back to the command line. I do have a script here, so I'm going to cheat a little bit in terms of installing the agent. And let me just show you what that looks like. All right, I'm going to do the install agent. So I'm going to go through a number of systems. If you don't quite understand it, it's fine. But walking through what I'm doing here is I'm copying over a certificate file. I am copying over, I'm then installing the agent, the comp file, the cert, the key, CA, and then I'm enabling and I'm going to restart it. And then on the Debian side, something very similar with apt-get. And so let me go ahead and do that. And I'm going to flip back over here. Let's see here if we get one. I should start to see some. Yep, I already see open source CentOS coming in. So the second they start up, they're going to register, and we're going to see them here. But the key is here a fast startup, easy install method, and we're using repos just as we would for NGINX Plus or open source. And I do want to circle back on one thing while I'm here. I'm open right now on the inventory scan. The inventory scan is going to look at the subnet I specify here, and I'll put in some other port ranges. I'll put in 81, 82, maybe 80, 80, and let's see if anything's on 444. Now this subnet is one within the network I already have. I'm just going to start a new scan, and in a little bit I should get back some information, and I do. We can see down here by the IP address that I do have some managed instances that are already here, but I also have identified an NGINX server that's running 1.14, and this does have CVEs that are applicable. And so if I click here, it brings me to the page where I can go through and find applicable CVEs. One thing to keep in mind of, though, is we are just matching the version. So if we're using a backported version, so as Red Hat might use, where we're backporting some of those patches, we still might say there's a CVE there, and you might have to figure that, like rule that out on your own. Because we're really doing this very minimally to give you a high level, check of whether you should look at something or not. This isn't meant to be an authoritative CVE scanner. It's really meant to be something to double check and to help find issues that may be in the environment that pop up. And so this can be run at any time you want to get that information. You probably know what it is, but it highlights us to the fact that there is a web server running here, and we don't need the CVEs because we don't know what web server it is. But we do capture that information. And then this can be pulled at any time you want because it's stored on the server side. The certificate scan, which I was referring to, operates in a similar manner. We'll just scan 443, and it's going to come back with anything listening on the default IPs. So if you do have strict SNI, it won't pick that up unless you have an agent, which we can find another way. This is really just to find, somebody configured a web server with an SSL cert, and maybe we don't know about it. And this will be able to pull back our remaining days. In this case, we've got 120 days on these two servers. And then on the, I have a wildcard here that is a very long time remaining. And then we can also see the other URLs that it's listening on. Now, these are both scans that we can call as needed, but the main function of Instance Manager is to do configuration management. And if I go to my inventory section here, this is a list of the instances that have an agent running that I can manage. Let's go into the open source CentOS machine that I've listed here. I'm going to click edit. And when I do, I have an editor that comes up. This is the Monaco editor. It's the same editor that Visual Studio Code uses, the same project for both of them. And in here, you could see, it looks pretty familiar. If you've seen IntelliSense, I could hover over a function here. And this really helps out when we might want to know a little bit more about a directive that we're using. Because when I first started using NGINX, I had set it up and I was like, now what? And I'd have to go through these directives, and often I'd have a browser open with the docs here, maybe a blog article or how-to over here. So our goal here is to really help reduce kind of trying to hunt and find this information on your own, to provide a central place where you can get an authoritative source of what you want to do. We also add our analyzer functionality. This is a collection of our best practices that we have put in. And if we do something such as put server in the wrong context, we're going to see a red underline, and it might be hard to see, but it says server directives not allowed here. So it's already calling this out. And these are things that we could push out, and NGINX-T might not catch it, but we would. And this is helpful to catch some things that might not be caught going into production as you're working on configurations. We also want to encourage best practice. So one of the best practices is to break out include files. So we want to make sure we do that. In this case, you can see all the includes are listed here. And I'm going to focus on my default.conf. And here I have an index.html that is serving this page. Hit refresh. You'll see it's just a welcome to send to us page. And I am going to change this into a sample file that I have that has just a bunch of kind of garbage information. So I'll comment out index, I'll uncomment sample, and I'm going to hit save. When I save it, it's saving it to the server or our own copy that's here. It hasn't pushed it out yet. When I click refresh, it's the same page. When I click publish here, it's going to drop the file on the endpoint and do an NGINX reload. And when it does that, it'll take effect. So I'm going to hit publish. I'm going to go here and click refresh, and I should see the page, and I do. So this is it's already updated this less than a second. It's very, very fast in terms of pushing out changes. In addition, it doesn't have to own the configuration files. So if someone were to edit this while I was doing this, when I hit publish, it would actually say the file's been changed. Do you want to overwrite or discard your changes? And this allows Instance Manager to be used with other tools that probably require ownership of the comp file. So if you're using a version control, if you're using a Puppet, something like that, where you're owning those configuration files, that needs to be the source of truth. You could still work with Instance Manager because Instance Manager doesn't have to own those files. We do look for changes happening under the covers. So again, if somebody manually edited the file while I was editing it, we would actually, it would show that here as, hey, something changed. In addition to that, and if I hit reset, I'm going to pull the comp files back from the endpoint. So we always consider the endpoint to be the source of truth for our comp files. We can add files. We can add a file that is a comp file here. And if we do the upload file is going to be something like a certificate or a key file or anything that we've given access to drop a file into. We can put the contents and push it here. Keep in mind, all of this can be done through the API. So you could design your own systems or integrate with your own dashboards to have the same functionality. Going back to the instance list, you might have noticed there's some tags here. The tags are free-form tags that you can enter, and we can use these tags to filter and group, but they also have another use that's very useful if we have, when teams grow bigger, sometimes silos occur, and we don't really know where NGINX might be, or when we do, we want to restrict access so that, hey, this group only has access to these instances. And we can do that by using a tag. So a couple here are using the finance tag for development. And if I go to settings and I go to users, I can define users here that would match whatever IDP or identity provider I have. So if I'm using OpenID Connect, these might match, for example, my F5 username. But the roles that would match those tags. So here, the finance role will only be able to use the finance tag, and then the read-only is going to limit that to read-only. One of the ways this works very well is that we actually have an NGINX, we include a copy of Plus in front, but you can use open source too. And we use that to do reverse proxy and be an API gateway for Instance Manager. And we can limit access by doing that and using all the features such as OpenID Connect to integrate with our own systems. And since it is an NGINX instance, we can actually manage it through Instance Manager. So I have right here the NGINX reverse proxy that I am going through on Instance Manager being managed by Instance Manager itself. And again, all of this can be done through API calls. Another feature we have is, and let me go here, I'm going to click on view metrics. We have a dashboard that's built in, but the dashboard itself really doesn't have a lot of data here. And that's on purpose. It doesn't have a selector. It's really just meant to show, hey, we're collecting things. We provide a Prometheus compatible endpoint, and we recommend using Grafana. And so I'm going to switch over here, and we have a sample dashboard that's been made. Here I can drop down. I can go to the open source CentOS box, and I can see there's some of the responses we had. And keep in mind, this is open source. So what you're seeing here is pulling from open source just by having Instance Manager. And under the covers, if I go here, you're going to see a PromQL, Prometheus Query Language queries. Now, I'm not the biggest expert at these, but if you have experience or you know someone who does, you can get very creative. So you can combine multiple instances together. You can modify the panels here and use different like graphs or tables or charts to really formulate this how you'd like it to look. And if we go to data sources, I've simply made a Prometheus data source. I've pointed to NGINX, and I've used metrics as the endpoint. And this pulls it just through here straight into Grafana. In my case, I have just basic auth set up, so I'm using a login here to do that. All right, let me go back here. I'm going to go back to my instance list. Now, at this point, I'm going to dive into a bit more on the command line. So I'm going to switch to the command line here, talk a little bit about how the agent and the server is set up. All right, I'm on the Instance Manager server here. Instance Manager, the NGINX Manager service runs as a systemd service normally. And we can see it's running here. We have a comp file that it refers to, but we do control everything through systemd for systemd compatible OSs. We support all the OSs that NGINX Plus will run on, and open source too. The agent is very compatible. In fact, the agents could run on more systems right now than we have out of the box. The manager itself is, let me pull it up just to give some statistics on it. Is about, let's see, not sure why that's taking so long. Let's try that one again. Is 35 megs. And then if we look at the agent, which is here, the agent is, the agent is 6.5 megs. And the agent itself, most of the files here are related to the how we use service, a service manager. So the sysv, systemd, launchd, upstart, you can run as a binary. But if you look, really what we have here is just a binary file and a comp file. And those are, so the agent's very simple. It's looking if NGINX is running, and then it can handle non-standard locations. It can handle open source, compiled, plus, and it runs alongside. If you're using containers, Alpine is supported. You can use systemd in containers if you want, but you can also have the two binaries just run. Sometimes I'll do a wait for it script, just making sure NGINX runs first and then the NGINX agent does. An NGINX agent will reach out to the server and open up and register with it. And at this point, it's bi-directional after the unary is set up through gRPC. So we use Golang to write both the server and the agent, but the gRPC channel is what allows us that communication. So we can call the agent, or the agent can call the server once that's established. And it's very powerful to use. Now, if you do have some requirements on the Linux side, we have built this for people who know Linux. And one example of that is we do have a man page for the agent and the server. So if you're familiar with the man pages, all the options are here. You can pass them along. They're explained here. And you can use native system tools that you already have, especially around logging, around service management. The other item too is SE Linux. So we do have SE Linux modules if you are running an OS that supports it. So if you're a RHEL shop or CentOS or any other ones that might use SE Linux, we do support that for both the server and the agent, enforcing if you need it. So the modules are there to download. And we do have a lot of functionality that'll work. We're always looking for examples where if there is an issue, let us know, because if NGINX can run it, we want to handle it. And we really are looking to handle all scenarios that we have open source and we have compiled and plus in, because we do believe the ecosystem with NGINX it expands more, with every use case and every scenario and kind of every flavor of that. And in my experience, we all use things differently, and we want to have a tool that we can actually push those changes out to. Now, outside the command line, if I go back and look at my UI side, there is a Swagger UI page that's included. So I can actually get to it by going to settings, API, and then open Swagger, and it'll open up my Swagger UI page. And I can do things such as, let me go down here. There's the scan, so I can put that in. But let me go ahead and list manage instances. I'll do try it out, execute. And I can get a curl command that I can use here. If you use Postman, that might be better. But here I'm getting my instance ID. I'm just going to copy that because I'm going to need it. And you can see the response that I get. So let me go and show you what the configuration looks like. So if I get details here, I'm going to get the instance config, try it out. I need to know my instance ID. I'm going to hit execute. Oops. Let's do this one. Looks like we forgot an A. There we go. And inside my response, now I'm using base 64 encoding. So if you're not familiar with that, you could probably Google it and find it. But if you are, hopefully you are, this is just a way that we can send in the contents of a, pretty much in this case, the conf or text-based format preserved, so that we're not skipping things like a space, or we have a weird quote or anything like that. And it's broken out into each include file. So we're able to go through and see which include files are there. And then this can be manipulated to add in an include or take away. And we're able to use this, again, to do these API calls. So we're now able to have an API to push and pull configurations as needed. I had mentioned before the ability to push other files in. And so if we go here, and let me go ahead and open up the agent conf file. Actually, let's do this one. there is a config dirs option here. And so this can be added in the conf file. It can also be passed in the command line. And we're always going to include etc NGINX. And this allows us to drop files in there. But we could put in etc SSL NGINX -manager if we have certs that we want to manage there in a comma separated list. We wouldn't want to put the root because, you know, we could write etc shadow, for example, which we don't want this to do. But we can add in really any directory we want to drop files into. And with adding that on the configuration file, we then can use that push, you know, to upload a file and the contents. So certs and keys are a good example, or JS files or Lua scripts, really anything outside of a conf file that we want to push. And as long as that permission's there, we can push that in. I will make a note, if we're doing SE Linux, you also have to have the SE Linux context set up. But if you're into that, you should probably know that already. And yep, this is all. So a lot of the configurations are here. Man pages, the docs files are right off of our website, and a lot of things you can do with this to help manage that sprawl. So let's get back here. So just to summarize, what we looked at was NGINX Instance Manager. And we were looking at ways that we could scan a subnet to see existing NGINX instances that somebody might have set up or teams might have that we're not aware of. We looked at how we could see expiring certs and also push some updates. And then we went through the features of NGINX itself. The NGINX Instance Manager today is available if you want to grab a trial or you want to check it out. Just go ahead straight on NGINX, or ask somebody who works here. And again, thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My name is Tom Gamull, and thank you for joining.